We are here today to discuss our vision for America's economic revival, which has already started. It started on November 8th. We want lower taxes, bigger paychecks, and more jobs for American truckers and for American workers. It's happening. By eliminating tax breaks and special interest loopholes that primarily benefit the wealthy, our framework ensures that the benefits of tax reform go to the middle class, not to the highest earners. It's a middle-class bill. We are going to be putting in and are studying very deeply right now, round the clock, a major tax cut for middle-income people. Not for business at all, for middle-income people. A middle-income tax reduction of about 10%. We're doing it now for middle-income people. This is not for business. This is for middle. That's on top of the tax decrease that we've already
The White House, where President Trump has just unveiled his new tax plan. He claims middle-class taxpayers will be the biggest winners. The details published so far show the wealthy will gain the most. White House correspondent John Carl starts us off on taxes. Good morning, John.
Good morning, George. President Trump is promising to deliver on a big new tax cut that he says will be a middle-class miracle.
Trump insists this is all about the middle class and that the wealthy will gain nothing from his plan.
They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing, and it's not good for me, believe me.
But there's one big provision that would clearly benefit wealthier Americans. He wants to eliminate the estate tax, something that is only paid on estates valued at more than $5.5 million for individuals, $11 million for couples. And he says he won't budge on that big tax cut to corporations, a flat 20%.
20 is my number, so I'm not negotiating that number. 20 is a
It's called a middle-class miracle.
Now, growing questions. Will all middle-class Americans get a tax cut? Doubts fueled in part by the president's top economic advisor refusing to say that's true.
I cannot guarantee that. You could find me someone in the country that their taxes may not go down.
Democrats today pouncing.
The president and his parade of millionaires are executing a middle-class con job.
Experts say a guarantee is not possible because the details are limited. The plan increases the standard deduction and keeps mortgage interest and charitable deductions, but appears to get rid of many others.
What there are eliminations of deductions that middle-class earners take, and that way they could actually see an increase in what they pay, even though their tax rate is going down.
And tonight, questions about this presidential promise, that the rich won't benefit.
It's not good for me, believe me.
In fact, Mr. Trump's blueprint slices the top tax rate to 35%, while eliminating some taxes that would help the wealthy save, like the estate tax.
The idea that the rich don't benefit from this is patently false.
And how would the president's tax plan benefit him personally? Tonight, the White House is refusing to say. The president's top economic advisor insisting Americans care more about what's in their own wallets than what's in his.
Over shrinking tax refunds. It's the first tax season since President Trump's new plan went into effect, and people are flocking to social media to complain they're not getting back as much money as last year. Rebecca Jarvis is here with more. Rebecca, what is behind this?
Good morning, Michael. Guys, good to see you. Yeah, most look forward to that refund check. Some even rely on it. But so far this year, many of those who've received tax refunds in the past aren't getting them, and some are even having to pay extra.
According to the IRS, the average refund is down more than 8%, about $170 from last year. The government shutdown also delaying some filings, with the total number of returns down 12.4% from last year in the first official week of tax season. Eva Superset, who works at a nonprofit, says she owes on this year's tax returns.
In past years, I get about $1,000 to $1,500 back so that I can pay my property taxes. And this year, I just don't have a refund to pay.
On social media, thousands are using hashtags tax scam and never owed before. One woman writing on Twitter, I always got a small refund. I owe $300 this year. So, yeah,
tax season 2019, and tonight some early returns suggest many Americans won't be getting the refunds they expect and could even owe money to the IRS. Already, some early filers have lashed out at President Trump on Twitter. I just did my taxes and made the same as last year. I owe $4,000 more. I voted for Trump, but will not be next election. Worst tax return I had in a decade, and I won't vote for you again, especially after I started on my 2018 return.
We passed a massive tax cut for working families.
The new tax law doubled the standard deduction for most middle-class Americans, giving workers a modest paycheck bump from pure withholdings that may have gone unnoticed. As a result, the IRS tells NBC News, some workers may receive a smaller refund or even potentially owe tax, especially if they did not check and adjust their withholding in 2018. 30 million Americans are expected to owe the IRS. Preparing her 2018 tax returns, Gina Endy is struggling with sticker shock. Last year, her family got a $10,000 refund. This year, they owe $10,000.
I felt like I failed my family. I thought I was following things closely enough. And I thought, well, will we get the money to pay a tax bill?
The reason? The Endy's property taxes in New York are $18,500. While they used to be able to deduct all of their state, local, and property taxes, the Republican tax law capped those deductions at $10,000. The Endys, with 3 kids in college, owe $30,000 in taxes. Their employer withheld $20,000. Now they're on the hook for another $10K. They're not alone. 30 million Americans are expected to owe money.
Ever since they won control of the government in 2016, Republicans have been obsessed with getting this one thing done.
Tax reform. Tax reform.
Tax reform.
Tax reform.
We're going to have a phenomenal tax reform.
They've passed a bill, the president has signed it, so let's break down what's actually going to change. Imagine that instead of getting paid in dollars, you got paid in cereal. The government takes a certain amount of cereal in taxes, and it uses it to pay other people to do things, like build roads, fly fighter jets, do research. You get the picture. The more you earn, the bigger the share of your cereal the government takes. Sometimes the government wants to incentivize you to do certain things with your cereal, like if you buy a house for 100 pieces of cereal and then sell it for 200 pieces of cereal, you'd normally have to pay capital gains taxes on that profit. But there's a special loophole that says you don't have to. The tax code is full of loopholes like this, which means if everyone puts their cereal together, there'd be 2 bowls. One that the government dips into for taxes, and one it doesn't. Now, Republicans want the government to take a smaller portion, and they say they want people to keep more of the cereal. But if they do that, the government won't have enough cereal to pay for what it needs. So part of this new law is taking some of the cereal that's not taxed and change the rules so that it is taxable. That way, the government can take a smaller share of the cereal, but still pay for the stuff it needs. This is what politicians mean when they talk about broadening the tax base. Here's the problem. Republicans aren't broadening the base enough. They're taking a lot less cereal from people and adding some new taxable cereal, but not enough to pay for what the government needs. To pay for that stuff, the government is going to have to go into debt. This means they're going to have to take even more cereal years in the future to pay back the debt they're taking out now. Republicans think this will help grow the total amount of cereal available to both taxpayers and the government. So what happens to that $1.5 trillion gap? It goes back into people's bowls, but not everyone gets the same share. If you break the population into 5 equally sized groups based on how much they earned in 2017, and look at how much each group will earn in 2018, every group does get a tax cut, but fast forward 10 years, and you can see that lower and middle class Americans will actually pay more since their tax cuts aren't permanent. And if you break that top group into smaller groups, you can see the very wealthiest benefit most of all. So while this new law does close some loopholes to bring in new tax revenue, the bill's larger purpose is to realize the Republican vision of a fairer tax code, one in which the wealthiest pay a lot less.